evening, folks, and welcome back to the Shining Light podcast and part 2 of the Goshen School Board 2022 election story. If you tuned into part 1, you know that the 2022 Goshen School Board election was far from ordinary, but it had its roots in the clash of liberal agendas and concerned citizens. Tonight, we pick up where we left off, right as the election drama started to unfold. We'll take a closer look at how the campaigns played out, the underhanded tactics used to keep certain candidates off the board, and the questionable actions that turned this local race into a legal and political minefield. So sit tight as we examine the run-up to the election between late July and November. Community member turned school board candidate Rob Rader had begun ramping up his campaign in July, and following the Elkhart County Fair, we get a glimpse of how concerned some on the Goshen School Board were with this development. On August 2nd, first-term board member Alan Kaufman wrote the entire board and Superintendent Hope asking if they had seen Rader passing out information at the fair. Board President Brad Weddle stated that he had heard about it, but had not seen him. Board member Jose Elizalde, who was running for re-election, stated he did not go to the fair. Alan replied, again to the entire board, "I have a friend who, at my request, sent him an email saying he met him at the fair. He really did. He asked Rob to send an email asking for more information on his campaign, why he's running, etc. I'll keep you posted." Now, while Kaufman was on his first term and not up for re-election, he was by no means new to political power. He had served many years on the Goshen City Council and then for more than 18 years as the Goshen mayor. This use of government resources to communicate a spy operation on a political opponent was not a simple mistake. It also would not be the last use of government resources at the school system to oppose a political candidate. The superintendent, Steve Hope, jumped into the ring opposing Rader's candidacy while on the clock at the October 10th, 2022 board meeting with a public speech saying in part, "At our last board meeting, Mr. Rob Rader, a candidate for our school board, made a statement which I feel I must address on behalf of everyone working in Goshen Community Schools. Mr. Rader stated that Goshen students are being subjected to inferior education, and the numbers prove that. I'm not making that up. Mr. Rader also stated, I want to support our teachers, yes, but not at the sake of the children, who I believe are getting inferior treatment. On behalf of everyone here at Goshen Community Schools, we take offense to these statements. I believe that people who choose to run for school board seats for a public school should support public education, support public school teachers, and be committed to understanding the families and students we serve, rather than throwing contemptuous statements." In a later reference to this speech, Hope wrote to Board President Brad Weddle, "I agree that he has no respect for you or for Goshen Community Schools. He is really saying that if you don't completely agree with him, that there is no other viable stance. He ran an insulting campaign, and I felt I had to say something when he stated GCS students were getting an inferior education." After the meeting, board member Kaufman wrote, "Superintendent Hope, I was trying to tell Carol how good your smackdown of Rob was tonight, but I couldn't do it justice. Would you mind emailing me your text? Thanks." Hope sent it over the next day. Kaufman's interest in this case was typical political maneuvering for him, but it also was due to the fact that he was the campaign manager for Rader's opponent, board member Jose Elizalde. He wrote on Facebook, "Yes, I am working with Jose Elizalde as his campaign manager. I'm proud to do it, as I have no doubt that he is by far the better candidate for District 3. Kaufman was personally vested in seeing Mr. Rader defeated by Elizalde, and this explains his keen interest in finding out the information on Rader's campaign. Going back to our story, Superintendent Hope didn't act alone in opposing Rader while using government resources during that board meeting. Student ambassador to the board, Lauren Grant, also gave a speech opposing Rader in which she said, "Why am I telling you this? Students are concerned about the possibility of a future school board that does not focus on what is important to students and what we deal with on a daily basis. Or worse yet, a board with a closed mindset that does not attempt to understand the complexities of student life. Why should I or any student in Goshen Community Schools have to be concerned at all about who is on the school board? As someone who is a minority in nearly every way, I am genuinely concerned about the direction of this election. Students are worried that there is a faction of our community running for school board that is intent on removing what we need to be successful. I am standing here in front of you, not as a lone individual, but as a representative of the entire student body. As a majority-minority population hailing from multiple religions and backgrounds and belonging to many sexual identities, we are asking you not to lose sight of who it is you represent. Hope also provided Kaufman a written copy of this speech and one from the co-president of the GSA, Jen Yoder, who spoke during the public speaking portion opposing Rader. In turn, Kaufman wrote the student and copied the superintendent. Thanks for your eloquent remarks at the school board meeting. I was serious when I suggested you ask Goshen News and Elkhart Truth to run them as op-eds. A wider audience needs to see them. Any references to Rob Rader specifically should be replaced with generic language. They may not print it with his name referenced, especially close to the election. I know the Goshen News editor well. I will send her an email and encourage her to use them if you choose to send them. I don't have a personal contact with anyone at the Elkhart Truth. So how did the student write her speech? On October 12th, Hope wrote the board that Lauren did have some help with her statement, as she is a student. At the same time as this was happening, the Goshen News was preparing to get involved. Not only were they providing favorable coverage to the anti-Rader crowd, but Purple for Parents had jumped into the game endorsing 3 of the 9 candidates, Rader, Linda Hartman, and Ryan Glick. And the Goshen News saw an opportunity to make their position known, while acting as if they were unbiased. Their reporter, Danny Messick, decided to run what very much looked like was a planned hit piece against the endorsed candidates. She replied to a complaint from Nafziger about some of their later election coverage, explaining what her intent originally was before her plans were derailed by Kaufman. She wrote, "Newspapers generally don't cover candidates for elections aside from forums and the general election tab in order to not appear biased. Unfortunately, with how controversial this election has been, we had to do something. It was initially my intention to write a story on what Purple for Parents was, using the candidates' own statements. Again, I normally wouldn't, but it's a group unlike anything we've ever seen, which does make it newsworthy. And frankly, I wanted to make sure the community had a thorough understanding of what they stood for straight from the horse's mouth." We had spoken with Kaufman about this actually, days before the mailer was released. He knew we were working on it, but we didn't realize he was putting the mailer out as soon as he was. I had plans to talk to the P4P folks that following week. So the story, which was initially meant to explain P4P in detail to the community for reasons a non-biased reporter won't say, had to focus on the mailer as well, which honestly sucked. So yes, the Goshen News was planning a hit piece for reasons an unbiased reporter can't say. Man crafts his plans, but it is God who determines the future. The initial intention never got its opportunity to see the light of day because of the mailer that Kaufman put out. This mailer would derail the liberal train, causing it to fall into the very pit they dug for the conservative candidates. Instead of being a hit piece, the Goshen News was left with a lame duck attempt to figure out what to do with a mailer filled with inaccuracies. The narrative changed from that day on as the liberals involved shifted from attack to defense. With our time running short, we will wrap up part 2 here. Part 3 will open the mailer and how it came to be. We'll take a look at the other candidates involved and how, with just days before the election, the mailer set the race on fire and left 4 sitting board members facing felony charges. You will not want to miss part 3, so don't forget to tune back in to the Shining Light podcast. Until next time, have a good night.